Good people. HAVN for me as a brand is incredibly exciting. They're doing things right on so many levels. Excellent feeling packaging that is both visually pleasing and like protective for the product. Everything on the inside too shows me they're thinking about like little details and the user experience. The 360 right now is probably my contender of the case of the year. I really enjoyed working with the 420, but the 360 is getting me more excited because it's exactly my style of a mid-tower. Not too large, fully compatible with whatever hardware you want to throw at it, and has incredible airflow. But more importantly, they know that airflow and specs aren't everything, so they've really made sure to refine the entire experience so that you feel good about your purchase. Let me show you why.
New 360? This thing feels incredible already. Wow.
Love me these little details of quality control, making sure the loop actually stays rounded. This stone finish is absolutely gorgeous, moving away from wood. The stone is here, so watch out. It is beautifully smooth, it is pretty, and definitely unique in terms of creating that color contrast, both for the white and the black models. Between the two color models, I definitely prefer the black one because the contrast between this front panel and the black looks way nicer to me than the pure white exterior metal and this like kind of a warmish beigey white front panel. I think the color contrast is a little bit off on the white one. Now the white model actually looks really good with the darker stone front panel, but you can't say the same thing for that beigey front panel on the dark case. It just doesn't work. We have these tiny rubber pads on the side panel for much easier grip. There's even one on the top side if you have the top plate removed, so you can still access the side panel. This is freaking brilliant. The tempered side panel doesn't actually have a frame at the bottom over here because this part gets inserted into a plastic housing on the actual case. So definitely handle this with care when you are placing this down during assembly. The top I/O is properly spaced out to not interfere with each other when you are using slightly wider USB devices, for example. This is awesome. We have a non-symmetrical graphic for the center of the hub, which means even if it's slightly misaligned, it doesn't matter. Regardless of the rotation speed, it still looks fine and not like it's wobbling. We have two models available, your standard BF360 and the BF360 Flow. With the Flow model, you get the fans, so dual 180mm fans at the front and 140 for the rear. If you were to buy the fans separately, you'd spend $70 on those two 180mm fans plus the 140 at the back. So there's the huge incentive to potentially think about the Flow model if airflow is your priority. Surprisingly, both models still get the fan controller, but the Flow model does not let you install anything other than those 180mm fans at the front. This metal cover, of course, is removable if you are installing a 420 at the front. And because I have the Flow version with dual 180mm fans pre-installed, you actually don't get the bracket that will otherwise mount 120 and 140mm fans. Definitely keep that in mind. If you buy the non-Flow version, then the bracket is included. In terms of temperatures, this thing is almost a chart topper, very close to what Fractal Design is doing with the Torn cases and those giant intake fans at the front. So basically following the same formula. Like, you don't need to run the front fans at full blast because they're massive and they still deliver a ton of airflow. So the noise profile is pleasant and definitely not an issue here. Now, at first glance, the interior seems kind of basic, but they have a lot of stuff going for it. Let's start with the rubber grommets, and I think as a concept, it's brilliant. It's not perfect, but we do have these two height-adjustable platforms, basically letting you lock a certain cable to exit at a certain height, which is absolutely necessary, especially for larger cables like the 24-pin, your SATA cables, etc. In practice, for thicker cables, it doesn't look as clean as it should, but for anything that has that low-profile power supply connector, it is awesome. Also, you cannot fully secure the clips onto the rubber grommet, therefore if the cable is slightly heavy or something is pulling it down, it's gonna push down the cable clip as well. And nothing special or unusual about the accessories, plus we do have additional cable clips included in case one of them snaps or rips. We also have this really flexible GPU support bracket that's built into our rubber grommets. It has full vertical mobility along the rubber grommet. We have this left and right flexibility too, and this little platform that rotates and you can extend it out depending on how
long the GPU is and where you want to position these two rubber bits.
I love that the thumb screws on our PCIe slots have this plastic washer to avoid metal on metal contact and therefore stripping the paint. This big opening and dip on our power supply shroud is going to be excellent for directing airflow from our front fans towards the GPU. You can see the fan shroud creates a bit of a vortex right below the GPU, which helps to channel that airflow directly into those fans. Surprisingly, there's no airflow leaking either at the bottom or the top. Now, when I run my actual gaming machine with an RTX 5080, you can see the difference between something like the HAVN 360 Flow and like the Montec HSO2. You don't have that much of a difference in terms of temperatures. Even when we populate the Silverstone FLP02, which is slightly hotter, but like, are you gonna really notice a difference in a few degrees? So this is the best thing about the Flow model. Those fans right now are operating at like 800 RPM, 600 RPM, which is incredibly quiet. And the system is still performing just as it would if the fans were running at full blast. Think about that. This piece on the top bracket can be removed to accommodate 180mm fans. By default, it supports triple 120s or dual 140s. It's also attached in a way so it doesn't automatically drop, and you do have to slide it out intentionally for it to exit. And of course, this entire portion of the frame is removable. Obviously, this gives you way more access, especially from the top during assembly, and this bracket has appropriate padding everywhere to avoid metal on metal contact. As for the back section over here, it looks way more sophisticated than your traditional mid-tower. I love the idea of hand holding, especially when it comes to cable management. So first of all, things are labeled when it comes to channel routing, which is going to be helpful for novice users, but we also have standard Velcros all around the motherboard tray. I would argue this is way more user-friendly versus cable tie points, especially in this corner region over here where squeezing a cable tie point is generally way more difficult than dealing with a Velcro. I love the placement of the fan hub with all the fans already pre-routed, and if you install any more additional fans at the top, they can simply go into here. The power supply sits on a slightly raised platform, which makes installation way easier, especially when we have this giant lip at the bottom. Your two storage brackets are completely away from all your cables, which is awesome, and can be relocated to this traditional space behind the motherboard. Now, having built two systems with the case so far, I gotta say I'm impressed. They've done such a good job with nailing all the small details that compound to an overall such an enjoyable assembly process and make you feel really good about the case and all the hardware that's housing. This is definitely one of my favorite cases when it comes to cable management. There's just so much space behind the motherboard tray. All the guides are excellently spaced out and laid out. I don't have to deal with a cable tie. I would say that's a positive in my book, and all the Velcros are nice and strong. My only minor complaint when it comes to assembly is actually with the GPU holder. Like, you need to access the screws from the back in order to have the vertical mobility, and the thin rotating platform is good because it's low profile and kind of hides underneath the GPU, but just getting to the right placement for it was a little bit more difficult versus like pretty much any other GPU anti-sag holder that I've worked with. And overall, I like the aesthetic of the enclosure, especially the front panel, all the ventilation pattern, but for some reason when I close it, this whole side feels quite basic. And I think the case actually would have suited a solid side panel instead of glass. And the team at HAVN are so responsive, we found an error on their website for specifications. That was corrected within 2 hours. Thumbs up to their designers and manufacturing process, plus everybody behind the scenes too. All right, guys, let me know what you think of the new HAVN 360 in the comments below. I'm Dmitry. I'll talk to you in the next video.